Hello, everyone. You listening to the Small Business Show. I'm your host, Swire Ho, the promo guy. Today, my guest is Thom Singer. He is an executive search consultant and a professional speaker. And as a speaker, Tom teaches people about the power of business relations. It goes beyond networking and instead look at how your human connections are your secret weapon for finding out more opportunities than your competition. How are you doing, Tom?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Swire.
Would you mind to give us a little bit more background about your work and then how did you become a professional speaker?
Sure. So I work part of my life. One silo is I work for a company called Stanton Chase International doing business development. They're an international executive search firm. And my job is to find companies who are looking for VP and C level executives to help grow their team. And then I work with the search, making sure that they're finding, a great slate of candidates. On the flip side, I also have spent the last 12 years as an author and a professional speaker. And I speak for companies and at association events talking about how does the people side of business really give you an advantage over your competition? Your network really is your secret weapon if you do it right. But over the past decade, a lot of people have been seduced into this world of social media, and they think that likes, links, shares, and follows really make a difference. And they're not bad. I'm not against social media. I'm really pro using these online tools. But a human to human engagement, a real friendship, if you will, or at least some sort of a foundation of shared experiences, when you develop those types of relationships that aren't super common, they're uncommon, that's when the real magic happens in your career. And that's when your entire future can open up in a lot of different directions.
Yeah, I think this is a timely, topic too, because it's kind of strange. I will admit it for me too. Like, haven't been, seeing a lot of people for the past 15 months. I've been to a in-person networking recently. Didn't know what to do. It's kind of weird. Do I shake hand? Do I fist bump, or do I just wave? So, have you seen changes of how people connect with each other? For the past year or so.
Oh, yeah. This is a really, really hot topic. I'm being brought into some of these conferences to sort of be the opening speaker, to be able to set the tone for how do we do it. So there have been studies done for years, even long before the pandemic, where they have surveyed people who either live on the space station for a long time or they traverse something like Antarctica alone, or maybe a prisoner who has to do some time in solitary confinement. And they find that when those people come back into society, it takes a month. It can take a months before they get over those little socially awkward feelings or those socially awkwardness. And now we have an entire society all around the world where we've asked people to socially distance for a year and a half. And now they're coming back. And so a lot of people are just like you. They're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I teach this stuff. And I went to an in person event and found it really weird to walk up to people and just be like, hi, I'm Tom. So the topic is super important, but it really doesn't matter. I mean, even going back before the pandemic, people were, all opportunities in our lives came from people. And those who were able to cultivate really good networks and build really strong reputations where people knew them, liked them, and trusted them, those people always had more opportunities. Those are always the people who excelled. So now, as we get back into this human to human world, there's a lot of opportunities for people who maybe didn't succeed at it before to get out ahead of everybody else in this new environment.
Any tips you could give me for my rustiness in networking?
Yeah. So, like I said, they asked us to socially distance for coming up on 2 years. Well, what we have to do is we have to take ownership now of socially tightening. So I call it, how do we socially tighten? And the first tip is you have to take ownership of it. You have to be able to make sure that you're the one reaching out to people. There were so many people who felt lonely and disconnected during everything we've been through the last couple of years. There was already an epidemic of loneliness in our society, and it got exacerbated by the pandemic. So you need to be the person who reaches out, check in with people, be the person who says, hey, are you going to be going to this conference in our industry? I'm going to be there. If you were thinking of going, maybe we could go together. Be the one who intentionally has contact with people that's not just a bulk email. We've gotten into a situation where there has been so much broadcast, be it social media posts, be it newsletters, group texts. We've had so much broadcast, but that's not personal. So I tell everybody, try to be more personal, one-on-one in your communication when you can, less broadcast. So that's the first tip. The second thing is you want to be able to provide value to people. You can't just be calling to touch base every few months. So you've got to be thinking, what do these different people in my network need? Who should they know? What articles have I seen that they should read? Look for ways to provide value to people. And then beyond that, get creative. What worked before may not work now. So you've got to get creative in how you're interacting with people. Are you putting together like a weird eclectic lunch of people now that we can go to restaurants and eat indoors? Organize like 4 or 5 people who maybe don't know each other, but could complement each other. Be the person who's doing something a little different than everybody else. And then the final tip is be transparent. Don't pretend like your life has been perfect. We've all been impacted somehow. And it's okay. Well, you don't want to be Debbie Downer or Eeyore, like, oh, everything is so horrible. You can be transparent and say, wow, it's been a really tough year and a half for me. So I'm really straightforward with people. I made most of my living for 12 years as a professional speaker, and live events went away. And so my business went to zero. So one of the things I did is I joined this company doing business development for them. Another thing I did is I started doing more online presentations, and I had to learn to become a virtual speaker and get a studio and do other things. And it was all hard. And so I tell people, yeah, my life was really good 18 months ago. And I've had to, I've had some bumps in the road. And then I tell them how I had to get scrappy. And you know what? People don't go, oh, he had a hard time. He sucks. People say, wow, he or she, when you're transparent, they had a hard time. And look, they got scrappy and they've overcome. And that usually helps you build relationships than just acting like everything's been perfect.
I like that. Especially come from a point of view of caring for the others. So you're not just, yeah, maybe a product and service that you need to sell, right, to survive, but then doesn't mean that you don't care about the other person. And now I think caring is how people will respond better than if I'll buy this and I'll give you 10%, whatever. And people rather to talk to another human being.
People trust people who have a lot of compassion. So if you're totally self-focused, they're not going to trust you. But if you have compassion for others and you care about them, they're going to be drawn to you.
Okay, let's talk about mistakes. What are some of the mistakes that you see people do? You mentioned a couple of them, but are there other things that you would suggest that we avoid and not do?
It's you got to be true to yourself. So what works for my personality might be different from somebody else. But some of the common mistakes, I think, is people leading with themselves. So we've taught everybody in our society for 20 years that they have to have an elevator pitch. And the idea is that you have 3 or 4 sentences that maybe are a little bit fun or quippy. So as soon as you meet somebody, you flick that switch and just recite your elevator pitch at people.
I have that.
But the problem is when you first meet somebody, they don't care about you. You know who they care about? They care about themselves. So instead of starting with your elevator pitch, and having an elevator pitch is good because there comes a time when you have to be able to clearly and concisely tell people who you are and what you do so well, but don't lead with it. Instead, memorize 4 or 5 questions that gets other people to open up and tell you about their life. So one of my favorites is when you find out who someone is and what they do, say, how did you get into that industry? And do it in a way that you're interested. Now, some people, they don't have an interesting story, but many people have a very interesting story about how they ended up doing what it is that they do. So ask them those questions. Another great question after they've told you who they are and what they do is ask people, what's your biggest challenge in business? Now, here's the funny thing. Most of the time when I ask that question, people tell me their biggest challenge and I think, wow, that's a doozy. Good luck with that. I have no idea how I can help them. But every now and then, someone tells me their biggest challenge, and I either know the answer or I know somebody who can help them. So ask that question is always a good way to do it. And then a great thing to ask people, especially when you first met them and they're in a different industry than you, is ask people, what do you need in your job to be more successful? And when they give you those answers, file them away. And then later look for ways to provide them. If you know someone who has those answers or you have those answers, look for ways to help. If you lead with a way of just helping people, you're going to find that more people are going to want to help you.
I think you touched on a lot of good points because most people, think about deep down, right? Your last networking experience. Did you do most of the talking or did you listen most of the time? So for me, I usually talk a lot. right, when
Me too.
networking. But then when I changed to listening to the others, I picked up on a lot more things. So, like you said, maybe they're not a deal client. Maybe they could be a friend. Maybe they could business contact, but we might not work together. So, and that's fine. And a lot of people, I think the mistake is they walk away, they disengage. If they're not a prospect, I'm disengaged. But like you said, ask how they get started. If people can talk to you for like half an hour if you have the time. And then I think you're right with that question. What is your biggest challenge? Especially if you know that person might be a prospect, they actually will tell you what they are up to, what are their pain point, or maybe you're a plumber, they're toilet is overflowing right now. So that's the challenge. And if you are willing to listen, you might be able to find out more about the person than you would if you just telling them your features and benefits of your business.
Yep. Yeah. Talking too much about yourself, at especially when you first meet somebody is the kiss of death. Now, here's an interesting thing is that networking doesn't happen at networking events. And people go, "What? Yes, it does. I'm there with my business cards and my cheap wine and stale cheese." Networking happens in the follow-up. The networking event is just a tool to connect with somebody. So in reality, the event itself isn't different than LinkedIn or Twitter or YouTube. It's a way to discover somebody. However, what do you do on a personal level to build a relationship after you meet them? And a relationship isn't built, it's kind of like dating. You don't marry somebody 5 minutes after you meet them. You go out on a first date, then a second date. Maybe there's not a third date, but if there is, then that person plans the third date. And then, you start hanging out more. And over time, the relationship builds. Same thing is true in business. So you shouldn't look to go in for the sale right away. This is the problem on LinkedIn right now. People will be like, "Hey, I think we should connect." And you hit the connect button and they're like, "Buy my stuff, buy my stuff."
Yeah,
And you're like,
I
"Really?"
really don't like that. And yeah. Yeah, if they get to know me, maybe I'll even, they always want to connect with you and then they want to book a meeting. Like I don't know who you are. If you get to know me a little bit, maybe I'll book that meeting. But then right away you want to force me into a meeting, the answer will be no.
Right.
So wanted to get your take, and love all the tools that you provided so far. Wanted to touch on both virtual networking and in-person networking. What are some of the best tools, and what are some trends that you're seeing after what we have been through for the past year and a half?
So a lot of organizations did a good job with this, and a lot of organizations didn't do a good job with providing that online networking option for people. So oftentimes when you would go to some sort of a digital event, they would then break you up into breakout rooms so that you would be in Zoom or some other platform and you'd get that. The problem is they'd give you like 5 minutes with three people. Well, that barely gives anyone a chance to give their elevator pitch or to say anything. So one of the mistakes people make is they don't give people enough time in virtual networking and they take away some of that serendipity that we have at a live event. When I talk to people who go to live conferences, and before the pandemic, I was speaking at 40 or 50 events a year, and I asked people, what's the best part of this conference? A very common answer is, God, those impromptu, serendipitous hallway conversations. So if you think about it, when you're at a live event, it's the person you accidentally sit with at lunch who you talk to for an hour, or in the bar at the hotel before when you go have that glass of wine before you go to bed. That's where the real stuff happens. Putting people into a rotation of speed networking in a Zoom room for 5 minutes doesn't provide the same thing. However, sometimes they did it right where you have the ability to go into a breakout room and change rooms just like you would if you were standing around at a cocktail party. You'd be able to say like, "Oh, I want to talk to that person." So where it worked best was when there was a little bit more free flow to the networking than just sort of like speed dating your way through. However, just like going to a conference, meeting someone doesn't matter if they gave you 5 minutes in a breakout room or 50 minutes. If you don't follow up with them, it really doesn't matter. I have met hundreds of people through digital networking in the last year and a half, and a lot of them I didn't want to follow up with. There wasn't any connection there. But the handful, the very few that I really connected with was because I owned the follow up, reached out, and sometimes you got to reach out 2 or 3 times because you get in their email, they're busy, they see it. Those emails, everybody gets so many emails. Once your email goes below the email bar of death, like 20 emails down, it might be till Friday before they go and clean out all the spam in their box before they ever get back to you. So you have to be more persistent in an online world to do the follow-up than maybe you did in an in-person world, because sharing an in-person experience does help bond us together a little bit.
Okay. So I want to dig deeper and you're a great networker. So, this is a perfect question for you. So do you go into networking with a goal? And obviously, if you are able to connect with some people, uh, how do you follow them? What are your process? Would you mind sharing a little bit to us?
Sure. So I used to go in with a goal that I wanted to make 5 meaningful connections or whatever, but that was kind of a selfish goal. Those were connections of people I could sell to or I could do business with or that could hire me. So now I go into a networking event saying, wouldn't it be great if I could meet 2 or 3 people who I could introduce to somebody else?
Hmm.
So when I go to a networking event, I actually, ask people, what are you looking for? Who are you looking to meet? And whether they're in the room or they're somewhere else, I look for ways to introduce them. Now, a great thing is when I meet people who are in the meetings business, I ask them, what type of speakers do you look for your event? I would like it if everybody who had a live in-person meeting hired me to be their keynote speaker. And I mean everyone. But I also know that I'm not the right fit for every single conference. So I ask people, what are you looking for in your next keynote speaker? Well, I know hundreds of keynote speakers. So then I can follow up and say, I was thinking about what we talked about. Here's 3 or 4 people you may want to check out. So if I go in looking for how can I meet people where I can connect them with others, along the way, I make better connections for myself. So that's the first thing is I go in with that goal. The second part of your question was, what do I do to follow up? Number one, if it's in person, I always try to get a business card from somebody and I always try to send them a handwritten note. Well, there's a
Hmm.
couple problems. People don't carry business cards as much. And the other thing is people don't publish physical addresses either on their website or the other. So sometimes you have to use email. The problem with email is a lot of people get 200 emails a day. So if I send you an email and say, hey, Swire, it was great to meet you, you might see that email and you might respond, nice to meet you too. Doop, it's gone. But if I mail you a handwritten note and you open it, you touch the envelope and you see the logo on the front of the card and you see my handwriting and I put my business card in it. So now you touch that. Humans are tactile. That handwritten note has almost magical powers over just sending a text or an email, but people discredit it. I was talking to a young person the other day and he goes, I'm 25. If I sent a handwritten note, people would think I was an idiot. And then someone else who was there, who was very successful in his company, said, I do it. So don't discredit that people don't want those notes. Some people could care less. And I was speaking at a law firm once. I go, does anybody hate getting a handwritten note? One of the partners raised her hand. She found it to be shallow and cheap and that people just did it to get attention. She's the only person who ever raised their hand at that question. Most people are like, oh, wow, that took a little more effort to follow up. So doing that type of follow-up is important. And then the other thing is every time you leave a meeting, you need to own the follow-up. So if you have a meeting with somebody, you say, hey, can I reach out to you so I can set up a follow-up call? When you have that follow-up call, you have to know, hey, the next step, can I send you this information? Things don't happen by accident. People are too busy to just let relationships just happen. You have to take control over building it. And it takes 7 to 10 interactions with people, not before they buy from you, not before they think you're great, before they even really start to notice you. And that's the hardest thing today in this noisy world is even getting noticed.
Yeah, I like that. It's the personal touch. I think I received 2 handwritten notes from. Actually, I saved them actually right here. I guess 2 episodes ago, actually wrote me a note. So happy I kept it and I show my wife, I show my kids, I make a big deal about it. So yeah, I do care, and I'm in the gifting business. So like if something that I respond, it's something really connected with me.
I
um
think that's I
and
think that's
and you
great.
you got to have a lot of friends, I assume, because you actually are on a mission out there to find business for others. So I would assume that a lot of people or a lot of your networking partner will actually keep you updated and let you know what they're up to, so you can be on the lookout for them. Is it one of the strategy that you're able to grow your business? Because now, in return, when they find something that that you could help on, you're the first one that they reach out to.
Yeah, I mean, out of sight is out of mind. So you have to constantly be finding ways to sort of have that drip contact, campaign so that people always remember you exist. And it has to be in a not self-serving way. And then over the long run, when they see an opportunity for you, they'll think of you. So I had a friend one time who his company brought a speaker in for their conference and they didn't like the speaker. And he shared that with me. And I said, well, who picked the speaker? And he said, I did. And I said, why didn't you call me? And he goes, I forgot you did this. And I thought, if one of my best friends forgot, I said to him, I go, how many professional speaker friends do you have? And he laughed. He goes, you're the only one. And I'm like, and I didn't cross your mind. He said, no. If you're out of mind, they're going to go with somebody else. People always go for what's easiest for them. So people think, oh, people are going to do this big search and find out that I'm the best. No, they're going to do a little search and go with whoever's the easiest to hire. So if you're trying to, stay in touch with people, it's great. But the other thing is, if you develop a reputation of somebody who's always referring other people, all of a sudden there's people who want to get on your radar because they want you to refer them. And I have found that the number one source of business for me in both my careers is referrals. It's word of mouth. And so if people aren't thinking of you, they're not giving you word of mouth. So you've got to find ways to stand out. And there's a billion ways to do it, but you got to be doing something. If you're sitting around just thinking, one tweet a week is going to do it, that's not going to do it.
Yeah, I like that. Out of mind, out of sight. That's, you have to be, when people think of a certain thing, you don't have to be the best, but then you have to be the first person that they think of. So I always try to encourage my client to do that. You're not just do one big promotion or one big push for whatever product and services that you sell. You have to remind people. You got to check in. You got to take them out to lunch. You got to invite them to a virtual call. If they're far away, but then you got to make sure that they know that you're available. Maybe they thought that you're out of business. People always call me. Sometimes, are you still in business? Because I haven't been
Yes.
in touch for a while. So like I wasn't doing a good job to connect with that particular contact. So yeah. But wanted to ask you more and asking as us, starting out, wanted to build our word of mouth business. Obviously you're a pro, you have it going on automatic already. A lot of people want to reach out to you for your advice. For someone who might not have built that referral base and word of mouth part of the business, how would you advise us to start?
Well, the first thing is you got to do good work. Your work product matters a lot. If you do good work, people will typically tell other people you do good work. The second thing is you got to tell people, I'm looking for more business. So when you do the good job for somebody, you remind people, by the way, my whole business works on referrals. My whole business works on word of mouth. So if you know anybody else looking for my product or service, be sure that you go out and tell them. And then look for ways that you can highlight your clients. So I host a podcast, and if I put a client on my podcast, that makes them look good. Now they're thinking of me. So find ways that you can highlight your clients. Who can you recommend them to that's going to help you along the way? Again, the more you do this, not everybody you help or refer is going to return the favor. Some people don't know the right type of people. Some people are selfish and just self-centered. And some people, they don't have what I call referral DNA inside of them. There's a lot of people who say, oh my gosh, I can tell everyone about you. But then when it comes down to it, they're like, well, would that be weird to tell my friend about this person? And maybe I won't. Or what if they don't do a good job? They just don't have that thing inside them that wants to bring people together. However, you don't need everybody to return the favor. You just need some people to. And sometimes it's not even people you help. So I always say that if you help 10 people and 2 help you, you just got 2 things you wouldn't have. Don't focus on the 8 who ignored your favor and didn't return it. Focus on the 2 who did. But here's the other thing. The world is full of selfish takers, people who are me, buy my stuff. It's all about me. And the real givers in the world are getting sick of it. And so what happens is if you help Becky and Mary and Bob and Becca and Ted and Sam, somebody over here who you don't even know is watching, and they have a giver's soul, and they see that you're out there as a person who's trying to just be a servant, trying to be a servant leader, helping others, and they'll start referring you. So if you help 10 people, maybe only 2 help you back, but 1 or 2 other people you don't even know get wind of the fact that you're that kind of a person. And all of a sudden the word of mouth starts to grow. And and then when you get those referrals, you have to say thank you. That's the biggest thing. And I got burned because I didn't do the good job of this to begin with. People would refer me and I'd say thanks, but I never would report back how it went. I wouldn't, do some sort of a thing. So what I tell my clients is find a way to, when someone refers you paid business, find a way to over thank them. Now you don't have to go crazy, but a bottle of wine, or if they're a coffee drinker, some specialty coffee, or if they're into electronics, a Amazon gift card, something that goes beyond the call of duty that says, I saw you helped me and I appreciate it, means next time they're going to go back to you.
Wow, I love that. Because I too have that mentality. I like to help people. And I particularly like your example. Maybe only two or even one people ever send me referral. I feel I feel hurt sometimes. I really do feel hurt because if I know there's a contact that works for people that I know, I really try hard to pull them on together. And I know that it works for them too, but then they never uh, return the favor, I would say. But like your example, don't focus on what you don't have. Focus on what the one that you have. Maybe that one can help you grow as it becomes your biggest client. So I think focusing on a positive mindset, I think it helps you better because people will walk up to me and say, I know you do a lot of networking, but it doesn't work for me. I just go there and talk to all these people, drink wine and eat junk food, and that's it. And I never had any good business out from there. So I think it's the mindset, and you have it right down the right path, because it's not the numbers game. Is you building the human interaction, and then they know, keeping it top of mind. And then maybe once in a while they send you a connection and you really do thank them, so then they feel that you appreciated their help, and then maybe they'll send you more and more. Or I think we got to think about that. They're watching you. Maybe they're sending you a small one to see if you do really the good work that you said you would do. And if you report back to them how you're able to help their contact, now they may open up the whole flood of people that might able to use your service. Man, people will watch you, and I'm conscious to who I'm referring to, because I don't want to refer someone that's do bad work to my friends and contacts.
Yeah, no, I think that you're right. And then the other thing to remember on kind of what I was just saying, and to reiterate that, is I ask people all the time who say networking doesn't work, like the example you gave. And I say, how many people have you referred who got paying business? And if people can't answer that, then they're not doing the networking right. You have to be able to refer people to business. And then that's when people start noticing. Like I have a sponsor for my podcast, and the reason they're the sponsor is I referred them 20 clients, and they're like, hey, who are you? And we want this to continue. So we're going to sponsor your podcast. And I just referred them because they were a great vendor, and they were the editor of my podcast. And, I think they're the best editing company I've ever worked with. And I've worked with them since the beginning of my show. And I've now probably sent them 30 clients or more, but they literally were like, who are you? And why do we keep getting these referrals from you? So now we have, a relationship, and they sponsor my show.
Yeah, that's nice. Sometimes, we just wanted to help, and maybe like you said, you had a good experience with the company, so they don't even have to ask you. You
Yep.
do it on your own because you enjoy working with them. So think about, now in our business, maybe if we can do good work with integrity, we live up to everything that we promised that we will do. People are going to remember. And would you rather work with someone really cheap, but then don't respond, or work with a professional that are true to their word and provide you great services and products? Yeah, I really love that, Tom, and you gave a lot of good advice. So for a listener who wanted to find out more about what you did and learn more about your skills, what would be a good way to get in touch with you?
So you can find me at my website, which is thomsinger.com, THOMSINGER.com. And I'm on all the social medias at Thom Singer. And again, I spell Tom THOM.
Thank you so much for coming on to the show today, Tom. I'm going to think about my networking strategy, and I know that by following your advice, I'm going to be a better networker.
Well, thank you for having me. This was a pleasure.